everyone, my name is Clyde, and in today's video, Skada and I talk in depth about the best destroyers to take into this upcoming season of Tier 6 clan battles. We are by no means experts, but we've done a ton of research and we think we've got a lot of really useful and hopefully entertaining information in this video to help you and your clan select the best DDs for this season. Tell us in the comments, what destroyer are you looking to take into clan battles this season? I want to know which boat and I want to know why. Without further ado, let's get into it. So first, what we want to do is talk about destroyers. So destroyers, we're going to go destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and then aircraft carriers. So the way we do this right now is we're going to give our top threes, and we'll kind of alternate back and forth between picks. If we have the same pick, we'll talk about the ship at the same time. I think I'm going first, but I'm not 100% sure. So we're going to hit next slide and find out. So here we go. Okay, this is my pick. So if you take a look in the upper left corner, there's a little Clyde icon, the little blue guy, that's me. The red guy, that's Skada. So I'll talk a little bit about Hatsuharu. Hatsuharu is a tech tree Japanese destroyer, and the reason I selected this ship is it is the lowest conceal and has the longest torpedoes, and they still have pretty good range. The Hatsuharu, I think, is a really capable DD, and for somebody who doesn't want to spend any money, they don't want to buy a premium ship, I think it's a good pick. If you were around back during the event where I got that snowflake camo, you might even have a premium camo for it. And if not, one's pretty cheap. So the 10-kilometer torpedoes at this go 62 knots, as I've said. They reload fairly quickly. I didn't include that information here, but we can find out if people are curious. The guns will pen 21 millimeters of armor with their HE, which is pretty good. So you shouldn't need to waste any of your Captain XP on IFHE in order to get maximum pen. If you're curious about that, you should watch my IFHE video on YouTube. The speed of this thing is 36.5 knots, which is plenty fast for Tier 6. I already mentioned the conceal, again, 5.8. I think this is the absolute best concealment of any destroyer at this tier. And so there might be something else. If you guys can think of something else that gets that low, let me know. But I think Hatsuharu is going to be number one there. For equipment, it's a basic destroyer. We've got damage control party to put out your fires, fix your rudder, etc. You've got smoke to hide out in if aircraft carriers start hassling you too much, and you've got a turbo or a speed boost module that lets you accelerate to 39.4. So yeah, I mean, that's my thoughts on the Hatsuharu. I think it's a solid pick. For, again, specifically for folks who don't really want to grab a premium ship, and or folks who really like that like sneak around super stealth gameplay and who want those 10-kilometer torpedoes instead of the 8s that are so common at Tier 6. Scott, any thoughts from you on Hatsuharu?
Yeah, I like Hatsuharu. I don't like Fubuki, which is the other tech tree Japanese boat. This is the age-old argument. So when I started playing destroyers, I don't know how long ago that was now, 7-8 months ago, I don't remember. I did the Japanese lines first, and I did them in tandem. So like when I was doing Hatsuharu, I was doing Fubuki, and I hated Fubuki compared to Hatsuharu. And I think I used to bemoan to you, like, why is Fubuki the one on the torpedo boat side? It has worse concealment, and I don't like the smaller torpedo launchers. Like Hatsuharu should be on the torpedo boat side. So I like Hatsuharu, and I think it's a good pick for this as long as you like that torpedo boat gameplay style. The guns are really only there for like finishing blows and like oh no situations, really. But yeah, I like this ship quite a bit. It you know, in my head it goes from Hatsuharu to Shiratsuyu to Kagero. Like that's how the line should go in my head. So yeah, if I was gonna play a Japanese torp boat, and I was like a Shima captain, like I would probably play this over Fubuki. I know a lot of people like Fubuki, but I just never enjoyed it as much as this one.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I like this better than Fubuki. I probably, if I spent more time with both boats on the screen, I could tell you exactly why. But I mean, I think Hatsuharu's got the torps, it's got the stealth, and you're right about the guns, right? And the reload on them is on the screen there, 7.5 seconds, at least in my configuration. But, you know, it's got good HE alpha. So if you're fighting another DD and they're low and you get one good salvo on them, you'll do 2,500, 3,000 damage maybe. But if you've got to wait for that second reload, you know, those guys might have reloaded twice and been slapping you too. So you want to make sure that you're doing those finishing blows with it for sure. GMAC in chat says, what about Shinonome? Shinonome is a Tier 7. Great boat, but not available.
Shinonome is a Tier 6.
Oh, I'm sorry. Shinonome is a Tier 6. I'm sorry. I was thinking of Shiratsuyu. I can't remember if Shinonome is coming up later. But remind me of that, GMAC. We'll talk about it when we get to the honorable mentions. But Shinonome is a good boat too. I don't know, Scott. Did you have any Shino comments before we move on, or I guess we could talk about it now?
I wouldn't touch Shinonome in this because I hate the concealment on it.
Yeah, it's 6.1. Let me pull it up here.
It's worse than this. Like, that's why I don't like Fubuki over this, because Fubuki's a 6.1. I like the sub 6 conceal.
Yeah, Shinonome.
I think Shinonome is a good torp boat, but I just don't. I wouldn't play it over this. Plus, Shinonome's AA is like a guy with a sake bottle throwing them at planes. It's like non-existent.
Yeah, Shinonome is a 6.1 detect. The thing that makes it different from Hatsuharu is it has an extra torp launcher. So rather than having 3 torpedo launchers, it's got 3 torpedo launchers. But they're only 8 kilometers, and I think the speed on the torps, I'll grab that real quick. We'll just talk about it real quickly. It's fast. It's 66 knots. So Shino's okay, but I'd rather have the conceal for Hatsuharu. That's, for me, why Hatsu takes the cake. That said, we played a mountain of brawls this last couple of weeks, back when brawls was active for tier 6, and Shino showed up quite a bit. And Shino has good guns too. The range on the guns is rather low. I want to say it's 9 kilometers, right? So you're not going to get a lot of at-range shots taken with your Shinonome, but you might get a few gun hits in there too. So I think you'll see Shinonomes, but I would take Hatsuharu first. The reason why I might not, where I would lean to Shino, is because it is a premium. You can move another captain there. But the AA rating, as Skada mentions, is 1. It is the lowest AA rating you can get and still have a number, right? That's pretty brutal. Cool. If there's no other thoughts, Scott, we'll move on to your next one. Go. Monaghan. Lay it on me, man.
Yeah. I like this boat a little bit, and straight up front, like 6s is kind of a fraught tier. So like I'll just say that every time we talk about anything in here, because it's not like I'm like, hey man, let's go knock out some 6s. But as far as the destroyer availability goes, I think we kind of looked at lists that we were putting together, and we have a lot of ships, and so I wanted to talk about something slightly different that some folks might have. So Monaghan's interesting to me because if you run Monaghan's this weird premium where there's an A hull and a B hull configuration, and the A hull is like straight up a premium Farragut, which is great. If you like Farragut and you want to run a high tier captain on it, you can put that on there. And that's cool. But the B hull is what these stats up here are representing, and the B hull is really weird. It takes away a couple turrets and gives you improved AA, and the torpedoes change out from being like the 6.4 kilometer Farragut torpedoes to 9.2 kilometer torpedoes that are basically Benson torpedoes at tier 6. So that's cool. They're slow torpedoes because they're American, but you've got the 2x5 launchers with the 9.2 range, and they do big damage, right? 16,000 damage per torpedo is pretty good when you can put that many fish in the water. On top of that, even though they're low speed, everything at tier 6 is moving slower. So I don't think that's as big a detriment. And I remember looking this up the other day, and it's not on the card, but the detectability on those torpedoes is pretty low. They're not like, it's not like Udachi torps that are visible from space. They're pretty sneaky torpedoes as well. Monaghan in that configuration only has 2 guns though. It's like 2x2 on the front. The reload's 4 seconds. You can use them. They're floaty American 127s. If you get in a knife fight with this thing, you're going to be outgunned by a lot of everybody. The reload helps, but because they're both on the bow like that, you can just go bow in and make yourself as thin as possible if you're like shooting at another destroyer, and maybe you can get away with something that way. The concealment on this thing's not great. It's American concealment in these tiers, which is not epic. But again, you're getting that loadout of a lot of torpedoes. And then, in the extras, this has like a torp reload booster. And I put booster in quotes because it's not like IJN torp reload booster where when you fire it off, your torps are reloaded in like 10 seconds. When you fire it off, your torps reload in 30 seconds. So you go from, right, at least with my configuration, from 110 second reload down to like a 30-second reload, and then you can dump more torpedoes in the water. So it's like a torp reload booster light. Alternatively, you can trade that out for defensive AA, and the boat has pretty good AA to begin with for tier 6 destroyers. It only has 1 flak puff, but the 101 continuous damage is okay, and having defensive AA could help, because I do think we'll talk a fair bit about the whole aircraft carrier situation and what might happen in this clan battle season.
Yeah, I'll call out a couple of things, and you've touched on all these things already. But I'll, the artillery goes from 4 pieces to 2, right? And you pointed out that they're both on the front of the boat, so you lose a lot of gunpowder by going with this hull, but definitely gain the more powerful torpedoes. The AA rating, that 5.8 kilometer range, is not free. That's not common on destroyers of this tier, right? I think there's a few that have it, but a lot of them have like a 3 kilometer or a 2.5 kilometer AA range. So when we think about that 101 continuous damage, it's in a circle maybe 2 or 3 times the size, or 2 or 3 times the diameter, and that's much larger area of ocean than some of these other DDs. I, like you, I took Monaghan out and I tested it. I didn't like Monaghan. I don't like Monaghan when I'm up against 8s, but I took it out to test it for this because it is an interesting pick. And I think if somebody wants to be a torpedo person with excellent AA and fair concealment, you could probably make a go of this. I don't know that you'll see a ton of Monaghans, but I think it's an interesting thing for folks to consider if they haven't considered it. So interesting pick for sure.
Yeah, and if you really like Farragut and you
Yeah,
want to run
yeah.
Farragut, you can run Farragut. If you really like Farragut and you want to play A-hull Monaghan, you can, and it's easier to put a premium or a high tier captain on.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
because I have this boat, if I ever had an inkling to play Farragut, I would just play A-hull Monaghan and put my gearing captain on it.
Exactly. You can bring down a captain of high pointage. And that's a recurring theme we're going to talk about a bunch today is, when you're looking at these premium ships, one of the big advantages is you probably have a higher tier ship with an excellent captain on it that you can bring here. And that's going to be worth something in a competitive mode like clan battles. Absolutely. Yeah. No, Monaghan's an interesting pick. I'm glad it made at least one of our lists for sure. But yeah, the 30-second torp booster will catch you off guard if you're used to the 5 or 8-second torp boosters. I did take a look at the torpedoes real briefly. The long, or no, those are the short range torpedoes. Hang on, let me change the hull real quick. I was going to talk about the torp detectability. The torp detectability on these is 1.1, whereas I think it's 1.5 on Hatsuharu. Yeah, 1.5. So they're much less detectable than what you're going to find on the IJNs. Okay. I think we'll jump down to the next guy. Anshan is a ship that made both of our lists, and I used your picture because you've got that beautiful camo. So Anshan is a Russian destroyer that's in the Pan-Asian tech tree, and this was actually the first Pan-Asian ship to come into the game. It's like I said, based off a Russian ship, so 130 millimeter guns with a 4.8 second reload. It's a little slower than what you're going to see with some of the U.S. Ships. 4 of those guns, though, with good HE pen of 22 millimeters. A long range, if you want it, with main battery expert, 14.3 kilometers. It's got pretty normal torpedoes for the tier, 2 triple launchers, 8 kilometer range, 61 knots. Reasonable AA, it's a 20 rating. I didn't include quite as many statistics there as Skada did on the previous one. So we can look into those if people have specific questions. And she's pretty quick, 43.1 knots if you throw the speed booster, if you hit that speed boost button. 6.3 detection, so the same as the Monaghan, but with a more gunboat build, unless you go with the gunboat hull on the Monaghan. And the trouble, of course, is hopefully you have a good captain. There's not a lot of captains to choose on the Pan-Asian line, so unless you have a high-tier Pan-Asian destroyer or cruiser captain to put on this, you're going to have not a high-tier one. And, the Yu Yang and the Chung Mu, those upper-tier Pan-Asian destroyers, they're not really like the Anshan. The builds won't be optimized, but probably having more points with a suboptimal build is still going to be worth having on your Anshan rather than having, well, let me go recruit a 6-point captain and try to deal with just 6 points. I don't know, Skada, why did Anshan make your list?
I think even though it's a really old premium, it's pretty balanced for what it can do. The guns are good. It shoots. The guns are good, and it's a fast ship. And the torpedoes aren't bad. It's 2x3s with 8 kilometers, and they have a pretty good speed for this tier. They're not deep water torps because this premium existed before the line was implemented, right? So those are normal torpedoes that can be used on anything, and so that's nice. If you've played the Pan-Asian DD line, at tier 6 there's the Fushun, and the Fushun is like this exact same ship. It's also, both of these are Nevny class destroyers from the Russians, and Fushun is also there in the tech tree at 6. and has similar statistics, except it has deep water torps. I think that I picked Anshan over Fushun because it has non-deep water torps, right? I didn't want to be limited on the targets, but at least Pan-Asian deep water torps can hit cruisers, which I think we'll see, the most of in clan battles. But yeah, I think this is a pretty good all-arounder. Like, I think the torps are good. There's not a ton of them, but they're good enough, and they don't reload super slow. I know we don't have the reload up on the screen, but they're not terribly long to reload. And again, I think a lot of stuff in this tier has concealment around this concealment level. AA on it's is what it is, but there's only a couple destroyers at this tier that even have a 30 AA rating, and I think we picked most of them at some point. So but yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I like the way this boat plays. Pretty much was it. I could play it and I wouldn't feel terrible about doing so.
Yeah, it's not the stealthiest, and that's something to note, right? 6.3 is not 5.8 like Hatsuharu, or 6.0, 6.1 like you're going to see on some of the others. I did just look at the torpedo reload. Its base is 79 seconds, and then with my captain configuration, which comes off my Yu Yang, it goes down to 71.1. Because again, Yu Yang is more of a torpedo boat than Anshan is, so it's got a few. That captain has a few torpedo perks on it. It's it's a pretty good all rounder. I think you're right. With that, I don't think it's our number. Well, it's definitely not our number one pick. It's here on number 2 for us. But I think it's pretty good. And if you can utilize that speed and the run and gun with it, you can do well. You may struggle to push caps if they've got some really powerful cruisers crowding you, which is something to consider. This might be a good second destroyer for a team that's going to run 2. If you think of it that way. And I don't know that I'm recommending that necessarily, but if your team is kind of a 2 destroyer team, the Anshan could be a second one if you've got a lower detect sidekick as well. So I think worth getting, or at least taking a look at, especially if you've got it out of a Christmas crate and you've maybe never played it, that kind of a thing. This was literally, well, other than the Marblehead, which I was gifted when I went to Penny Arcade Expo, this was my first premium I ever paid money for. And it's the cheapest tier 6 premium. You can get it for $16. And there are prices on some of these slides. This is not an advertisement. Other than to just let you have the information. You guys decide you're interested in buying a ship, go ahead. I get nothing for it. So by all means, if you're going to spend $15 or so, this is not a bad way to go. Two comments in chat I wanted to call attention to. GMAX says turret traverse is a tragedy, and yes. So Russian guns turn very slowly on the DDs. You're going to spend some time using your rudder to help turn those guns in order to help you. And then Bowmaster asks about are most ships in clan battles premium? And Skada answered already, not really at high tiers. I would say at high tier, it's very, I won't say rare, but I think it's very common to have non-premium ships in there, especially if you're playing at tier 10. But at tier 6, I think there's not a lot of folks who have high tier captains just sitting on tier 6 tech tree boats. So I think the percentage of premiums is going to be higher at tier 6. I don't know, Scott, what are your thoughts on the premium non-premium ratio for mid-tier clan battles?
Mid-tier clan battles. I think we picked a fair amount of premiums versus tech tree at this tier, because down here at tier 6, a lot of the premiums are frankly better in a way, shape, or form. When you get up to the higher tiers, you have tried and true tech tree boats that are still really good. And then when you see non-tech tree boats, they don't tend to be straight premiums. They tend to be specials, right? They tend to be like research point boats or steel ships or whatnot, coal ships or something like that, right? So down here, I think we'll see more premiums. One of the reasons that, Clyde and I are talking more about some of these premiums is a lot of it has to do with captain economy. And we had a great conversation the other day with folks in our clan about this. The reality is that if you want to spend some captain XP or a few hundred doubloons, you can take a captain off of a high tier tech tree boat and put him on one of these tier 6 tech tree boats. The downside of that is that you kind of got to leave him there for the next 6 weeks, right? From August 18th until October 3rd, until clan battles is over. And then you can move him back to your tier 10, and that just kind of sucks. Like, we play a lot, so we don't want to do that. Clyde and I have 4 or 5 captains that are our primary captains for each nation, and we move them around fluidly as we can. And so that is a big effect. And like Anshan, we talked about, both of us have. I don't have a Yu Yang, I have a Chung Mu. My Chung Mu captain is my highest point captain for Pan Asians. He's built for torpedoes though, so he isn't the best choice for Anshan, but he's better than putting like a 10-point captain off my Baji, or like a 10-point captain off my Wukong, or something like that on there. That said, yeah, the turret traverse on this is brutal, just like it is on Fushun or on Nevni. So you kind of want like grease the gears on your captain, and you kind of want turret rotation maybe on the ship if you're really doing that. Yeah. And one other thing I wanted to throw in real quick about the guns on this: don't shy away from that AP against light cruisers, because the 130 millimeter AP on these guys works pretty well on the light cruisers you'll see if you get broadsides. It's high velocity because it's Russian. It's forgiving to shoot, right? These aren't Lopi guns. These aren't US destroyer guns. These are Russian guns in essence. So you have flat arcs with these. So they're a lot easier to use if you have gunboating issues.
Yeah, and if you're used to the USDDs and you're thinking, man, I don't know that I want to go out to 14.3K on the range with this gun, these guns on this ship, it's a lot more comfortable because of that higher velocity. You're going to have flatter arcs. It's going to be easier to hit at range than it is with, any of those USDDs that you can push out with their higher arcing shells. You'll lose some of the opportunity to shoot over mountains and hills, that kind of thing. But yeah, the ability to just hit your target more accurately more often is definitely going to be possible at range with boat. Like Skada, like my Yu Yang captain, I think is 17 or 18 points. My next best Pan Asian captain is for my Irian, and they have 11 points, right? So we're looking at a huge disparity in points there. Might I run my Yu Yang captain, which is more torp built for this? Probably. If I were going to run this one in clan battles, so it's great for folks who have a purpose-built captain that works for this. And that's why maybe when we look at some of these other ships that are available, and I'm talking across all the classes, cruisers, destroyers, battleships, aircraft carriers, whatever. If you've got it, well, maybe not aircraft carriers, because a lot of nations don't have higher tier premiums, but any of them do. I guess most of them do. But like the ability to move from or from a country that has maybe a high tier battleship captain that can come down to a low tier premium, and you can spec them up perfectly for that low tier premium because of the way the captains work now. That's a thing that Pan Asia just doesn't have, because it really doesn't have any other lines other than the destroyer line. And so like the US, the Germans, the Japanese, all these other countries have more captains to choose from and may have higher tier ships that maybe aren't your DD captain if the DD lower tier is different from the DD captain on the nation's line. Okay, I think we'll roll on to our next one. So that's Pan Asian Anshan here as our number 2 pick. Both of us, again, selected this ship for all the reasons just discussed. Let's roll on down to T61. Scott, why don't you walk us through T61? I went through Anshan. Again, I don't think anybody who's watching is surprised that both of us like this ship. Take it away.
I was really hoping you'd just be able to roll the footage from our last set of videos we did on ranked battles, where we effusively praised the T61.
Just cut to you and me talking about this 2 months ago. Put some film grain on.
T61 is great, and in this scenario, it really is the best choice in my opinion, because you're in straight 6s, right? So we both said we'd use T61 a lot in bronze tier 6-7 ranked, and I never did. I used E039 the whole time because I wanted those extra hit points, and that was what I used to bully people with. In this one, since it's 6s only, T61 is going to be rad. When we played brawls this weekend, we used T61 all the time. Somebody was in it, right? The hydros are great. The torpedoes reload really fast. The torpedoes are relatively quick. They don't hit super hard, but they hit hard enough for the tier. The guns are usable. The HE fire chance sucks, but because it has German quarter pen, the HE will pen most anything you have to fight, and the AP is good. It has German smoke, so not long smoke, but it makes up for it with all the other things that are great. But like you say there, right in the notes, you can't get it anymore. They took it out of the game. So if you don't have it, sorry. And the Gata is kind of a substitute, but not really. But yeah, if you don't have it, you can't use it. But boy, you're going to see a lot of them in clan battles, I guarantee. One other thing I wanted to throw out, and just kind of a topper on a piece of the conversation from that last thing, we were talking about captains. This is another situation where we can pull down captains, right? I can pull my Z52 captain down, and he'll work fine on this.
Yeah.
I could pull. I actually could pull my Elbing captain over, although he'd be a little bit more gun oriented. But I could pull him over. I could pull my Kurfürst captain because I could have a destroyer spec on him because of how that works now. It's great. One thing too to note though, we were talking about captains on the Pan Asian and how we're limited there. Tomorrow in 10.7 we get new captain skills, so there is going to be a free respecs, and so you do have a possibility on a line like that Pan Asian where you could spec your high tier captain to be better on Anshan for now, and then when you're done with clan battles, you could take him back to your Yu and then pay to respec him, or you might be able to get away with a late month free respec. They said that they're going to put a global free respec your captain button on a web page like they did last time. But last time, some of you may remember that didn't last the whole month. It only lasted like a week or two, because I know I went back at the end of the month to try to find that button to hit it to reset everything before the month was over, and I couldn't, and I had to go through and manually reset everybody. But anyway, I was just thinking about that while we were talking about it. So
no,
anyway,
that's a
T61.
no, that's a great comment on the captain respec thing. And you're right, that limited time last time sucked. I mean, Wargaming doesn't want to give out a free respecs for a 30-day period. And certainly with that last, or however long the patch is, right? Certainly with that last captain rework, it was really valuable for me to do that. I have a lot of ships and a lot of captains. I suspect I'm not the only one either watching the stream, and I know I'm not the only one talking on this stream because Skada has more ships and captains than I do, who really benefits from that global reset button. But yeah, there may be an opportunity to get a reset in there again towards the tail end of the season if that's a way you want to min-max your ships. I did want to talk briefly about T61's AP. The AP damage, I got a little spreadsheet here, if you can imagine, that talks about the AP damage on that boat, and it is 3,000 is the max AP, and that is the best of any of the ships that I looked at. And I looked at about 8 or 9 ships when considering this. And what we learned in the Daring IFHE video is that pen for pen, in other words, ignoring any shatters, bouncers, those kinds of things, when you get, not Odysseus, that's a great idea. I do need a spreadsheet emote. Pen for pen, the damage on Daring is 80% higher on AP pens than it is on HE pens, or it's 20% higher, right? The HE is 80% of the AP, and that is the same as the max values that they offer. The ratio there is the same. So that is to say, with T61's HE pen max damage being 1,500 and the max AP damage being 3,000, you can expect to get half again as much damage when you pen. So if you've got bad angles, stick with the HE. But if you've got a great angle, like Skada says, don't shy away from the AP on T61. They're only 128s, but when you get those pens, it's going to be bigger damage than you're going to get on the HE. So get in the idea of, get in the mindset, I guess, of using that AP when you can. And then the other thing, Skada, you might have mentioned this, and I might have been fiddling with Windows, but the quarter pen, the German quarter pen, gives you a 32 millimeter HE penetration with these 128s. So battleships and stuff that have 25 millimeter armor, 26 millimeter armor, they're not going to be able to get away from you and your HE. You're going to get a little damage most every time as long as you're landing the right parts of the ship. So there's a reason those guns are great. The AA, not so good as what we're seeing on the other guys. And those sensors, the acoustics, we found out in Brawls. Now in Brawls, it's even more critical than in Clans, but sensors are going to be key. So it's all about vision and understanding where your enemies are, understanding where their armaments, their torpedoes are, that kind of stuff is going to be critical. So thinking about this as a sensor-laden destroyer, it's going to be valuable there. Now, Skada and I have been theorizing that T61 is going to be probably limited or banned very quickly in clan battles, and I think that's probably true. If it shows up as often as we saw it in Brawls over the last couple of weeks, or last week, I guess, it'll almost certainly be banned, if not just limited. So we'll want to keep your eye on that as well, as we're thinking about T61 as we get out there. So anyway, again, only advice for people who already have it because it's no longer available. It's been removed from the game. But that is T61. Couple of honorable mentions I wanted to talk about, and we'll bounce up here to this next slide. Icarus of the UK Tech Tree line. This is a Tech Tree destroyer. It's available just for, grinding XP and silver. You can get the Icarus. It's a pretty capable destroyer. It's like and almost as good as the T61 version of the T61. So the gun DPM is very similar. It's got acoustics, but the range is a lot shorter. Rather than being 4 kilometers for ships, it's just 3 kilometers. but the acoustics last a very long time. If you use all the captain perk, or if you use the captain perk to boost them, you get out to 2 minutes and 46 seconds of T3S3 or torpedoes 3 kilometers, ships 3 kilometers acoustics. It has damage control, party, smoke, and acoustics. No turbo booster, no speed booster on the Icarus, but it's a pretty usable little tech tree boat. So if you're trying to avoid spending real money, and I totally support that. In fact, I encourage it, especially with recent behavior at the Ouija headquarters. Icarus is a great pick, and I think you're going to see them out there. Again, being a tech tree destroyer, you're going to see people who are not able to field as good of a captain as they would with a premium. So that is going to be something that you'll probably pay with a little bit. But if you can get up to 10 or maybe 12 points on a captain, spend some free XP, spend some captain free XP, I think you can get a pretty capable little platform out of the Icarus and get out there to get some work done. Skada, thoughts on the Icarus, or do you want to talk about Aigle?
I will. I like Icarus, so I will throw that out there. I think that, and back to what we talked about briefly about T61 getting banned. I think I looked. There's only 7 weeks of clan battles in this season, right? So I think after week 1, if I had to guess, T61 and Eric Lowenhart are both going to get punted. But I think then if you want a DD that's like it, I think Icarus is probably the next closest thing. I would rather play Icarus than Gata in that similar role to T61. I think it's closer in analog in style of play to T61 than Gata is. So that's all I have to say about that. I like Icarus, and you can talk about Aigle.
Yeah, I'll cover it real quickly. Aigle is one that we saw a little bit in brawls, and I think people started to look at tier 6 cruise or destroyers and they said, what do I do? What do I pick? What do I pick? They saw the Aigle, they saw the big guns, it's got big DPM and everything. I don't think Aigle's going to be as popular as some people might be theorizing at this stage, because I think the 6.8 conceal is going to be rough. If you're going to run with 6.8 conceal, you're going to basically be a cruiser against any of the destroyers that we recommended already. But I think some folks are going to try it. It's going to feel more like the Kabaras than like any other destroyer at this tier. So people who like that loud, shouty gunplay, they might go for the Aigle. But I think I wouldn't run it as an only destroyer, and I don't think you're going to see it in really high skill clans. But I think there's going to be some jerk that you and your clan are going to face who's running the Aigle, and they're going to gun you down. It's going to be really frustrating. The torpedoes on the Aigle also do huge damage. I can't remember the number right now, but it's like, yeah, 18,400 max damage, the maximum, the highest number of any of the destroyers that I looked at. But that 6.8 detectability is going to make it really difficult to use 8-kilometer torpedoes unless you're surprising somebody, popping out around an island or doing something clever like that. I wanted to include it here because I think it's interesting to talk about because it's so different from all the other destroyers. But in honesty, I think it's probably too different to really be useful in high tier play. When you get up to playing against, even when you get up to silver or gold, you're going to stop seeing it, I think. But you might see it a couple of times in bronze just because it is a real slapper. I mean, it'll come out and hit you. So that's Aigle. We talked about Farragut a little bit. You just mentioned Gata. I think you'll see those boats as well. Gata is definitely going to show up because of the sensors. We don't have a slide for it or any graphics on it, but I think Gata is going to show up for people who are interested in sensors and maybe think those 150s are the hot ticket after having played the German destroyer split. I think Gata's enjoyed a resurgence in popularity. So you'll probably see some Gatas. Like Scott, I think I'd go with the Icarus first, even though the torps are a kilometer shorter, but I think that's probably what I would do. I don't know if there's any other discussion, any other comments or questions from chat. GMAX says, funny, all the OP ships are from Kriegsmarine. It's kind of weird. Brawls was very German. I think we're going to see some German ships in clan battles as well. Any final thoughts on destroyers from you, Skada, before we go run a battle?
Yeah, I would say really quickly, I have a complete counterpoint on Aigle.
Oh, go for it, please. Yeah.
I think high skill players will play it.
Ooh, okay.
I think the guys who ran roughshod over people with Mogador in the tier 9 clan battles and who use Kleber to effect in the tier 10 clan battles, I think they will use Aigle because it's fast and the guns really hit hard and the torpedoes are brutal. And unlike those other 2 boats I named, it can stop and smoke up. So you can, if you're good, get it into a cap, smoke up, cap contest with it, but it will run and gun better than Anshan will or Nevny or any of those other tier 6s, and those guns really do hit hard, and they have good range, and the torpedoes are gnarly. So I actually think it's going to be a high skill fancy boy destroyer more so than maybe you do.
Now, you know what? You might be right on that, right? I always think of Aigle and I go, it's a Kaba, but your comment that it might be a Kleber or a Marceau or a Mogador is pretty apt. So, you know, maybe there's a valley, maybe there's low skill folks trying it and not doing well. Then there's the medium skill folks, and then there's those high skill folks who are really taking it out there and beating folks up. That's an interesting angle. I like that, actually. Hey, thanks for joining us for this World of Warships clan battles discussion. We hope you'll find the videos on the other classes and watch those as well. If you liked what you saw here, share it with a friend, send it to your clan mates, hit that like button, subscribe, and again, comment down below. And of course, we'd love to have you join us at twitch.tv/ClydePlaysLive. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next video. Destroyers to take into tier 6 clan battles. Now, we are by no means